Hi, good morning, everybody. Today we'll be covering our new topic in our Expert Insights webinar series. We'll be talking about navigating retirement, particularly the psychological aspects of entering retirement. We've got Sharon Moller, integrated financial coach. Sharon, thank you for joining us. The team and I were talking yesterday. I think we've been working with you for about 7 years already. I know you've done retirement workshops for our clients, and we've done different coaching programs with you. Sharon, maybe just before we get started, maybe you could just tell me a little bit about what is integrated financial coaching.
I'm glad you asked. So if you think about what financial planning is, we're looking at how you manage your money, structuring, and all the technical aspects. But each person has a relationship with money, right? That we have to also bring into account. So what integrated behavioral coaching is, or financial coaching is, really it's combining those two, the relationship to money and the emotional aspects around money and how we behave around money with the financial planning. So I run a course that I take financial planners through. You guys have been through a lot of that already over the last 7 years, where I help planners engage in this way with clients. I bring them some methodologies, some coaching tools, and some philosophies that they learn to incorporate into their financial planning practice. And yeah, it just enhances the client engagement, and it brings something new, another element into the conversation around financial planning.
Great, thank you. So sure, thank you to all our clients for joining today. And if we do have any guests or new viewers, we'll just do a quick introduction to Investonline. So as I said, we have this Expert Insights webinar series that we run, and we've been doing it since last year. We've covered a range of topics from taxation to retirement, estate planning, and investment markets. And all the recordings for all those past webinars are available on our website. So just in terms of Investonline, we're an independent financial planning and investment firm. We're based out of Newlands, Cape Town, but we do work with clients all over South Africa, as well as South Africans who live overseas. We're a team, I think we're around 16 in the team at the moment. Nick Brummer, he's one of the founders of the company and my co-director. He's standing at the back of the picture there. So he's a chartered accountant and a former equity analyst on the stock market. And in the team, we've got 5 certified financial planners, as well as 4 qualifying certified financial planners. We really do everything from retirement to financial planning to investments, and our financial planners are available to help you, which I'll talk a little bit more about at the end of the meeting. The name Investonline really comes from the fact that we primarily do video meetings. So we engage with our clients a lot via video meetings, which just allows us to spend a lot more time with our clients. So thanks, Sharon. Please go ahead and share with us.
Hey, well, thank you for having me, Stuart. I hope that everyone enjoys it. Okay. All right, so let me just get my slides open for you. All right, so today what we're going to be doing is hopefully covering in a very short and impactful session, exploring what retirement can mean for you. So this session is not around financial planning or the technical aspects around it necessarily, or any cash flow modeling, but it's about something that's just as important, I think. It's about how you set your quality of life, you understand your identity, get the sense of identity, and how you set your daily routine into retirement. So how can you prepare emotionally and mentally for what's next? So we'll reflect on how to design retirement that feels rich, purposeful, and aligns to the person that you are, or perhaps even the person that you want to become in the future. So take a deep breath, settle in, and give yourself permission to think deeply and honestly around this new stage of your life over the next 30 to 40 minutes. So many people see retirement as an ending of something, but in actual fact, it's really a beginning of a very important chapter in one's life. And it deserves the same level of thought, care, and intentionality. retirement is probably one of the biggest life transitions we'll ever experience. And it's not just about a shifting of how we spend our time, it's a shift in how we see ourselves, how we find purpose, and how we can connect with the world around us. For many of us, our careers have given us structure and identity and meaning. So when this change happens, it's not simply about stopping working. It's really about, discovering what's coming next and building that excitement for the next chapter. So a fulfilling retirement really doesn't happen on its own, though. I mean, Stuart, I think you've noticed that over all of your engagements with your clients. I mean, it takes this very practical planning. So you've got to be intentional about that, and you need to be emotionally ready. So today we're going to explore both aspects of that a little bit, and let's see what comes. Okay, but maybe I should start with just a reflection question. And when I say reflection question, I'm going to ask a couple of questions that you can maybe just note down and think about what you're thinking when you're answering this question for yourself, and maybe just put that down as well on a piece of paper. No need to share it anywhere in the group or in the webinar, but it's just for you to reflect on. So maybe my first question is around what actually brought you to the session today. I know that Stuart, you said there were a lot of questions around practical financial planning aspects, but this is, is there something else around retirement that you might be curious about, or maybe even a little bit unsure about? So maybe just think about that and jot down maybe one or two thoughts around that as we go through the session this morning. Okay. All right. So William Bridges, he wrote this book, Transitions, and what he brought for us through this book that he wrote is this concept of transitioning and the three phases that we go through when we transition. Now, like I said, retirement is probably one of the biggest transitions that we ever experience in our lives. That and maybe losing a loved one could be a little bit bigger than this, but retirement is the big one, right? And what he did give us in the book is a very clear distinction around the difference between transitioning and change. Now, change is the actual event that you go through. So it's almost like, when you're leaving your job, or when you move house, or when your kids leave home, that empty nest that's the change that's happening. The transition is the internal, emotional, and psychological event. And we don't actually resist change in our lives, we resist transitions. So when you think about, because that's the difficult part, it's the emotional, the uncertainty, the uncomfortableness that we go through when we're navigating some kind of change. And it's all normal, all right? We need to recognize that this is a normal thing. Now, what matters around this is that a change like retirement, oh, where am I going? Sorry. That was an accident. A change like retirement is really about, it could take about 2 to 3 years to navigate this change, which doesn't mean that you're stuck for 2 years. It doesn't mean that you're not excited about things, but it's just gives us that time frame of a process that we need to work through. And that becomes something that's quite important to think about when we think about how we navigate this. So if you're looking at the slide now, you'll see that the three phases of transitions that Bridges brings to us is this ending, this neutral zone, and then this new beginning. Okay, now, yes, everything that we go through in life, when there's a change, there is an ending that we first have to navigate. And in that ending, it's really about letting go of what we need to let go of so that we can move forward in an exciting way and understand what could become possible in this new world that we're moving towards. Now, yes, even though you might be excited about your retirement, there is still stuff that we have to let go of, like perhaps the role that you were fulfilling, or the routine that you used to have, the sense of purpose that maybe work gave you. Maybe even it's how we see ourselves that we often have to let go of, because we have to reimagine ourselves in this new space that we're moving towards. Okay, so it's this letting go of something that we can notice in the ending space that's very important. Skip over this process of letting go or grieving or understanding what it is that we're giving up, then we can't move seamlessly into the new stage, into this new beginning. We're always holding on to stuff that we're carrying with us, and it comes back to bite us in the butt often later in life, all right, when we're trying to experience this new stage. So it's important to spend time to pause and to acknowledge what's ending, and and what's to actually give ourselves the grace to to say goodbye to what we're giving up and to what we're leaving. All right, so that's the ending phase that we need to deal with. And then we have this next step, which is really the neutral zone. And this can be a strange place to be in, because you're no longer who you were, and you haven't yet become who you're becoming. So you're in between these two things. And it can feel a little bit foggy and uncertain, but the key here is that this neutral zone, I'll tell you what William Bridges, I think he gives a great example in the book. He talks about this neutral zone. If you imagine crossing a very busy road, let's call it the N2. Okay, I don't know if anyone knows the N2 here in Cape Town, but if you're crossing a busy road, which you typically wouldn't want to cross because it's quite dangerous, right? But the one that you're on the side of the road, which is the ending, and you need to get to the other side, and then the other side of the road is the new beginning, and in between is this neutral zone. Now imagine you start walking across the road and you decide that you're just going to sit down here. You're just going to sit in the middle of the road and you're going to spend time there. Okay, so that's what the neutral zone feels like. It feels like it's not intuitive. You want to move into this new space as quickly as possible. But what we get here in this neutral zone, it can be quite creative and quite exciting and productive, because this is where we test little things that we might not have tried before. We're experimenting. We maybe we're trying new things, we're meeting new people, we're seeing new possibilities, and it feels uncomfortable, but it's a good space to be in, and you mustn't rush it. And that's the importance around the neutral zone. Okay, so when you're moving out of the neutral zone and you've done the work that you need to do there, what's next is this new beginning. Now, this is where the new beginning, it starts to feel exciting. And there might be a little bit of challenge here as well, because whenever you learn something new, it takes a bit of mental capacity, and it feels difficult. But it's important that you're stepping into this new world, and in this new beginning, it doesn't always start the day that you leave your job. It could actually start before retirement as well, because you're doing the work, right? You're working through the transition, and you might be going through the ending and the neutral zone even before the day that you retire. That would be optimal, so that when you do retire, you're starting your new beginning, and you know what you want to do, and you're actually stepping in intentionally into your day and doing the things that are important and exciting and purposeful and meaningful to you. So, and when you get to that space where you're feeling lighter and everything is exciting, then you know that you've done the work that you needed to do through this transitioning that William Bridges brings to us. So I think that's important, just to understand that there is a framework that we can consider, and there's no real right or wrong space in this. So, and there's no time frame that is right or wrong either. It could take you 6 months, it could take you 3 years, it could take you 3 weeks. Okay, and that's okay. It's just to acknowledge that this is what you're going through, and it's okay to go through it in that way. All right, so the other thing that's quite interesting around this is that we handle change differently. So each one of us, some of us, especially retirement, we need to know all the detail, and we analyze the detail like extensively, and sometimes that gets us overwhelmed. We feel overwhelmed and anxious because we can't see what we can't see yet, and there's a lot of change that we can't actually unpack and be certain around, because the brain needs a lot of certainty, and then we become overwhelmed in that space. Or we might deal with change like, I'm not going to worry about it now, I'll just deal with it when it happens, and that's also one way of navigating change. Now, the one or the other is not, you need to find a middle ground. It's like, how can you be not too overwhelmed? You're considering things with intention, but not overwhelming yourselves with the anxiety that comes, okay, from being too detailed. But also not just putting your head in the sand and hoping that everything is going to be okay. So finding that sweet spot between the two ways of dealing with change is important. And then I often when I work with clients, I talk about, being this dasher. There's a distinction around a dasher and a lingerer, because some of us, we move from endings and something ending, we move quickly into new beginnings, and we try and experience new things and new activities, and try and bring back the excitement to fill the hole that we have. And then the others is like lingering. We're more nostalgic and we don't want to move on. We're holding on to things, and it's a lot more deeper emotional kind of response that we have there. And there's no right or wrong there. It's just, how do you know how you respond to change? Can you identify yourself in that? And maybe identify how others in your life also respond to change. Because when we can understand that, Stuart, then there's empathy, right? And then there's compassion as well. And then you don't have to, you're not blaming or shaming or naming or feeling bad about the way that you're dealing with it. So it's really just, thinking about how you've dealt with change in the past and trying to identify what your pattern is, so that when you go through retirement, that's probably going to be what you're noticing. And how can you either slow yourself down or use things like structure or things, or maybe even just doing something that you used to love doing, so that you can get unstuck from that neutral zone sometimes, when you feel like you're stuck in that space and you're not moving fast enough into a new beginning. Okay, so just noticing where you are and how you're feeling in those moments.
Yeah. And just to comment on this, Sharon, I mean, with our experience with a lot of clients is exactly this, is speaking to the client in the first month of retirement, it's almost a state of euphoria, like an extended holiday, versus a year into retirement, and they're finding their feet, versus 2-3 years down the line, and they've become almost their new retired selves. So it's quite a journey and quite interesting to be a part of.
Yes. And I think it's, as your role, I mean, you're great at this. It's really about helping clients see where they are through the emotions that they're going through, and just telling them that's okay. They don't have to rush, they don't have to struggle, and there is time on their hands. And the more they spend time in these different phases, the more, the healthier their retirement is going to be, both mentally, physically, and emotionally. Okay, and that talks to the emotions. So you were saying that some people actually get quite excited before retirement and enjoy their retirement quite a bit. And these phases, obviously have some emotions attached to them. And this illustration that I'm now showing on the screen is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's, she talks about the grief cycle. So this is probably not what, I hope that most people don't go through all of this when they're retiring, okay? But there is an element of maybe a little bit of denial, a little bit of depression, and then acceptance. And I think the importance around this model is to know that you're going to be moving between some emotions, whatever they are, up and down. It's not a linear approach. You're not just going to move from one through to the other and get to acceptance. You might be at acceptance, and then all of a sudden one day you're feeling a little bit like lost and a little bit, maybe a little bit depressed or morbid, and then you've got to realize it's okay. It's okay that I'm feeling that way. I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to be stuck in this emotion. Just naming it sometimes for ourselves is enough for us to move through it, so that we can then get back to the excitement and the things that energize us in our day. All right, so just important to acknowledge it, so that we don't feel bad when we're feeling bad. I don't know if that makes any sense. Okay. All right, so there's this fulfillment scale that also is quite interesting to mention. This gives a little bit more of a practical aspect to the model, the William Bridges model, and the grief cycle of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's. So if you're looking at this illustration here, you'll see that pre-retirement, this is typically how we would spend our day, right? We would have these 4 segments that we would be splitting our time up into, and work would take up most of that time in our day, because 80% of our time we're spending at work, and there's family and friends and health and hobbies, and everything is around meaning and purpose and value, hopefully. So what we're doing is purposeful and meaningful to us. And then whatever retirement age happens, and we're moving into this space now where work is what falls away in retirement, and we have this fulfillment gap that we're now exposed to. And it's not just about how we spend our time. It's about the emotion that gets generated there, because now, I don't have the structure that I used to have. I don't have the connections that I used to have in that space. And sometimes there's an emotional response to losing some of that. So when we talk about the endings, this is what we're dealing with. And the trick to a great retirement is to spend the time, hopefully before retirement, to think about these things. So how am I going to fill that gap? And I mean, when you're intentional about it, it can be quite, you can get the retirement that you want, that you can live purposefully and intentionally and enjoy the last segment of the last phase of your life, which could possibly be another 40 to 45 years, all right? So what we're trying to achieve through this is really to have the time that we're spending in our health and hobbies, our family and friends seems to be a little bit more, right? So we're spending more time in that. And we want to fill some of this fulfillment gap with our intrinsic skills. So when we talk about intrinsic skills, there's something that you used to do in your working in life that was important to you, and it was how you contributed, right? Either to society or to others around you. And there's something that you're great at that you need to connect with again and spend some time in your intrinsic skills as an outlet. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a slide to come. But optimally, you want to have your values. You'll see the blue here, the 10% that used to be, needs to be all encompassing. So it basically is the foundation for those other things that you're spending your time in, like your health, your hobbies, your family, and your friends. So it's important to understand what those values are and what brings you purpose, and then to tie it all together in your new day so that your retirement is fulfilling. Okay, so I don't know, is there anything there, Stuart, that I need to explain more?
No, yeah, very interesting. I think it's a really good graphic. Thanks, Sharon. Yeah,
All right.
no,
Okay.
no question.
Okay. All right. So how do we prepare, right? So yeah, I've got this illustration we call the onion, and you, who is the person retiring, you're sitting in the middle. That's me. Okay. If you have to think of yourself in that way, and we've got elements that you can. It's categories really on your life and elements in your life that you need to consider that are going to be changed because you're changed because of this transition. Now, if you think about work, think about your skills, right? So you won't stop working necessarily when you retire. You still have to keep busy. You still got to be, productive in some way. It might just be something that's a hobby where you maybe woodworking or you're crocheting, or there's something else that you're doing. But work is going to be a little bit changed. So what does that now look like in your new world when you've retired? What does team look like? I mean, just because you're giving up maybe a team that you used to be part of in the past, there could be, who's your new team? Who's your new squad, that you're going to be spending time with? I know my husband would say that is his golf partners that he's going to be spending time with on the golf course, and they're doing lots of productive work there. But yeah, so who else is there that you need to be incorporating in this retirement plan? Because they need to know about it, okay? They need to, otherwise you can't just fall in there when you retire. You've got to start having conversations beforehand about who your new squad's going to be. And then family. And I mean, if I think about husband and wife or partners, sometimes, you're spending 80% of your time away from each other during the day. Now in retirement, all of a sudden you've got to be spending all this time together. So what kind of conversations need to be happening there? Maybe it's you've still got to keep boundaries. You've still got to have your own identity, your own purpose. And how do we come together as individuals now so that we can navigate this new way forward in our lives? Okay, so, and the interesting thing about family is, if you think about your grandchildren and children, I often get like when someone retires, all of a sudden they become the babysitter, right? They have to look after the little kids during the day. And that's not necessarily what someone wants to do with their retirement. So how do you have those conversations as well? If it's what you want to do, that's great. But if it's not how you want to spend every day of your life for the next, 5 to 10 years, depending on the child, then maybe there's a conversation that needs to happen in that space, just managing those expectations that we sometimes assume, and then we don't have those conversations, and just having them out loud is important. Otherwise we disappoint people. Okay, and then your community. So who is in your community? Do you want to spend more time building community? Do you want to give back more to the community? So what does community look like now that you've moved into this retirement space? All right, so it's important to think about how you're giving your day structure, because that is important, structure and meaning. How will you stay connected socially? Because we need to be socially connected to people. Maybe moving into a retirement village earlier than later is more important, is a good idea for some people, because there you start building your community in your retirement space while you're young, and you can still do things that are great and exciting. And then you age with people that are there. I know some people think that retirement villages are for old people, but I can't wait. I can't wait for 65 so that I can go and spend some time in that space, because I think think that's exciting, right? And then how will you look after your mental wealth and your physical well-being? Because that is the most important thing. Think about what you're doing now today, and I mean, it's never too late to start, to be physically active and to be mentally, practicing your, looking after your mentality. Because by the time you're 80, the person that you're building now today in your 50s and in your 60s is the person that you're going to be looking at when you're 80. That's the reality that you're going to be seeing. So we've got to stay healthy and fit so that we can actually look after ourselves. And then, is there a mindset shift change that you need to be looking at? Because if you're mentally not ready, it's about looking at the positive elements of life and how the positive side of things and what becomes possible when you're thinking about the positivity, all the good things about retirement. Okay. And is there a mental shift that needs to happen in that space? And then what can you take with you, which we're going to talk about now, is intrinsic skills and passions and purpose, and what must you let go of? What do you need to grieve? Okay. And sometimes retirement, you plan for a certain retirement, and when you get there, it's not what you're realizing. Things aren't possible in the way that you imagined it. And even that is something you need to grieve and let go of so that you can move into retirement in a healthy way. Okay, so those are the elements that we need to think about when we're preparing. Now, a great activity that I always give clients to do, and I know, Stuart, you guys do this very nicely as well with your clients, is to help them think about what a day in retirement might look like, right? So you need to think about it in a lot of detail. So it's not just about, okay, I'm going to play golf every day, or I'm going to go and spend a lot of time on the beach, or, I'm going to be traveling. That's not enough detail. You actually have to think about, okay, so I'm in retirement. It's my first day of retirement. What time am I going to wake up? Okay. What am I going to do next? Am I going to read the newspaper, or do I go have coffee with family or family members, on my balcony? And then what happens in the next hour and the next hour? And how do I want to fulfill that day with something that's meaningful? So who are you spending your time with? And what gives you energy and purpose? And then to think about maybe in 6 months from now, so 6 months into retirement, how am I spending that day now? I've typically done all my traveling. I've sorted out all my cupboards. I've all my photo albums are sorted out, and I've done all of those fun things that I never got to do when I was working. Now, what am I doing 6 months into retirement? And what does that day look like? And then what does it look like in 5 years from retirement? What does that then look like? And how do I still bring the purpose and the excitement 5 years, once the excitement is of retirement is basically, it's not dwindling a little bit. Okay, so it's important to think about your day in those time frames. Yeah, I don't know if that's a useful activity.
Yeah, very interesting, Sharon. And I suppose even these days with clients, you've got some people retiring in their mid-50s and others who are choosing to work longer, not just because of financial reasons, but because of keeping going and having a purpose, working till the late 70s. So everyone has to go on their own journey with finding their retirement self, and as you said, their community and who they'll be involved with.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is very much bespoke to individuals, and it's something that you need to think about. And I think it's important to talk about this, and especially with you guys, because this helps think through how you need to plan for your money as well, right? Okay, so
Absolutely.
how are you spending your day? Okay, all right. So the other thing that we spoke about is this thing about intrinsic skills. So in a transition, you're not only letting go of something, you're actually, you're not retiring from the person that you are. You're really just letting go of what you were doing. So what can you bring that you were doing into this new world? And like you were saying, Stuart, some people want to work a little bit longer, some people consult, some people mentor, they teach, so you've got a skill that you can use and contribute. And whether you're making money from it, not really the aspect, right? It is possible, if you do something that you're passionate about, and you do something that other people are passionate about, then someone will pay you for it. Okay, I think there was a video clip that speaks to that on YouTube somewhere. But so first figure out what it is that you're great at and that you enjoy and that energizes you, and how can you bring that into your retirement world so that you can keep contributing back to society. And sometimes it's useful to ask people around you, what you're great at, right? Just go around and have some conversations with your friends, your close friends, people that you trust, because they'll tell you, this is what you're good at, even if you can't see it for yourself. All right. So sometimes it's useful to do that. But if you want your life to look rich and fulfilled, then we need to be productive. We can't just, it's not just about having more time, right? It's about having a great time. It's about having the financial freedom. That's important. But financial freedom is really about spending my day in the way that I want to spend it in. And if it means that I'm going to spend some time working, but I want to choose when I want to work, right? And then that's the thinking that we need to start going into when we're thinking about retirement. Okay, so what skills do you have that you can bring with you into retirement? Yeah, think about that and just reflect on that a little bit. Okay, so the last thing that I want to say is we just need to remember that retirement is not about an ending. It's not the end of the road. It's the beginning of an open highway. And I love this quote because it reminds me that retirement is expansive. It's not constrictive. It's full of opportunities. And maybe for the first time in decades, it's you get to design your time without the demands of work. And what will that open highway look like for you? Where will it take you? It's okay to not have all of the answers right now, today. Okay, but start thinking about this because you need to. The more you think about it, the more time you give yourself to contemplate these things, the more successful you're going to move into your retirement days. Okay. All right. So, what do you do next? Okay. So, if you haven't already spoken to one of the guys at Investonline, one of the financial planners there, now's a great time to reach out to them. They're very well equipped to have this kind of conversation, and they can guide you through the transitioning planning stages that you need to go through. And they can help you think through about what your day needs to look like in retirement and what your 6 months and 5-year day looks like. So there's no right or wrong time to start this conversation, really. Okay, the more time you have before retirement, the better. And there's a powerful link between the life you want to live in retirement and how you spend your time and how your money needs to support that life. So I think understanding the financial planning behind your required income and your goals and any of the expenses that you need to plan for, and how to structure that. That's what your financial planner is going to be doing. That's what Stuart and the guys are going to be doing for you. So reach out to them and have this conversation as soon as possible, and they can support you. So that's the most important thing to start doing, because if you can do all of that, then you can move into a space that's exciting instead of full of dread and so those conversations are so important. And then just to recognize that there will be an emotional response to all of these things that you're going through, and that's okay. The emotions are important. They teach us something about what we want and what we don't want. So if we look at it as data, it can be quite useful, but don't ignore them because they are important to you. They're important to recognize and to work through. Okay, so that's me, Stuart.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sharon. I think the graphics were really interesting in your explanations. Sorry, Sharon, just before we go on this, you can just go back to the last slide. I just want to chat a little bit.
Okay.
So, I guess what you said now is very important. I think that my experience, investors have almost two areas that they're thinking about when entering retirement. One side is financial and that big uncertainty. They've been in the mindset of saving, especially if you're a corporate individual, putting money into your pension fund. One day you're going to have an amount and you're going to ask, well, what can I get with that? And this is obviously very different from that question, is trying to say, well, what is the life I want to lead? What are my hobbies going to be? Am I potentially going to travel? What am I going to do with my spouse or my friends, etc.? And then look at how your finances can support that. And that's something that can be done, in our opinion, at any stage in the retirement planning. So, Sharon, we do have people that we engage with who've maybe retired recently or have been retired for a while, who then say, oh, I'm already retired. It's too late for me to do any planning. What would you say to that?
I don't think it's ever too late, right? So, because if you understand what it is that you want and you want to do, and you've done the work to do that, and if you start doing that today after retirement, that's still valuable. because there's always a way that you can restructure things slightly. And I've worked with many clients that are in their 70s already, and we've needed to just look at what it is that's important for them so that we can understand how their money needs to change in structure or to do something differently in that space. And it's very valuable. And maybe there's a conversation that needs to be had. Maybe it's not just about understanding what you need to do. There could be something in a conversation that's going to help unlock more of the excitement and the fun and the good elements, the great elements around retirement. So no, don't think that it's too late. I think it's important to always, if you haven't had this conversation, have it, even if you're in retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the more accurately you can model your financial plan, which includes your spending as well as your other goals you may have, such as traveling, whether it's buying a new car, supporting family, etc., the more security you can have around your whole retirement identity, essentially. So that's what we look at, that's what we look to do with our clients. And then just finally, Sharon, I mean, there's quite a few rule of thumbs in retirement planning that are thrown out there. A few of them, you need 70% of your final salary when you get into your first year of your retirement. Just various other ones. The mindset around, I've got X amount for retirement. What can I get with that? And you sort of will just fool your lifestyle into that. And in our experience, it's a much more case-by-case basis. And you mentioned a honeymoon period when you enter retirement, where some investors or clients may actually spend even more money when they start retirement in the first 2, 3, 4 years than they did in the end of their working career because they've got a lot more time. So is that something you've observed at all? Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're still young, right? When you retire. So that's when you're going to have the most energy physically, and you want to do things that are, exciting, and maybe you're not going to be as energetic about things 5 years into retirement. So you might spend less because you're not going to be doing as much, but you might be doing other things that don't cost you as much money, like rather spending time with people, individuals. So I think every individual is different, and it's not about some thumbsuck rule of thumb. I mean, I've never seen that working in a retirement space. You need to understand what that day looks like for you, and how how your money is going to support that. So that's why connecting the dots, the day, the financials, and that's why you guys, what you do is so powerful, because and it might change. You might be in retirement, and 5 years down the line, if I was working with you, Stuart, I would probably have to come back to you and say, listen, I'm seeing something else right now that I'd like to do, and maybe it's not going to cost me as much money, but I need to maybe think about what's possible there. So that conversation never stops, because we're all growing and changing as individuals all the way until the day we're no longer here on this planet. And I mean, it's important to review and reflect and make sure that we're doing the right things so that our money is supporting what we want to do.
Perfect, exactly. Good, Sharon. So I'll just end on essentially just a closing slide on our engagement process for anyone who's not a client of ours. Just in terms of our process, if you are looking to review your retirement plan, so first of all, we'll just have an initial engagement discussion. A lot of that discussion will be around the sorts of things Sharon covered today. More of a lifestyle discussion, retirement objectives, whether you are retired or heading into retirement, and really talk about what financials you have and how we can build out that plan for you. Secondly, we'll go and do the work and model your spending, your cash flows, your future capital goals. And we try and give you security around that of how long can your money support various different, let's say, lifestyle scenarios we could build with you. Thereafter, obviously, we need to get into the investment detail and look at your existing investments, comment on the amount of risk you're taking, and look at your investment fees. And thereafter, if we go down the full sort of engagement process, is we would make our recommendations, which include investment proposals, as well as how to structure your money optimally from a taxation and essentially a liquidity perspective, to make sure for all your goals you might have it with the retirement. We do it with our clients where it might be lots of different goals over the years, and you need access to money at all different times to make sure that that's going to be met through your investments. So yep, just 2 words from us just on that process. We are going to be sending out a survey this afternoon. Natasha will send that out, where you're welcome to let us know if you've got any questions, or if you'd like to have that 15 to 30-minute conversation with one of our team just around your retirement questions. Our next webinar will be on the 13th of August. We're going to have an economic webinar with Johan Els. Johan Els is one of the leading economists in South Africa. Nick will be hosting that, and we're hopefully going to have a lot of good information from Johan on politics, economics, and how that will affect markets. So look out for that. We'll also share the link to register for that as well. So thanks to everyone, and thank you to Sharon. And everybody have a good day.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Cheers.